ripple effect it would have on our family. Some memories never fade. They stay with you, etched in the shadows of your mind, waiting to resurface when you least expect it. I didn't know that an ordinary day could become the thread that unraveled everything I thought I understood about my life. It began quietly, with my husband working long hours and the house feeling emptier by the day. We were newlyweds, but something had already shifted between us. Our once vibrant connection had grown cold, leaving me searching for warmth in places I never anticipated. When my father-in-law, Mark, moved in, it seemed like a solution, someone to fill the silence, to make the emptiness feel a little less overwhelming. I never imagined that small, seemingly insignificant moments could change everything. A laugh shared over a story, a kind gesture that made me feel seen, none of it should have meant anything. But looking back, I realized that the tiniest details can become the most dangerous. I had no way of knowing that a simple, innocent encounter would mark the beginning of something that couldn't be undone. Even now, the weight of that moment is something I carry, a reminder that life can shift in an instant. And sometimes, the most unexpected people can hold the power to change your world forever. I was a newlywed, and my husband and I had just begun navigating the challenges of married life. At first, everything felt new and full of promise, but it didn't take long for reality to settle in. My husband was ambitious, driven, and determined to make something of himself. Long hours at the office turned into late nights, and soon, I was spending more evenings alone than I'd ever imagined. Our once vibrant, lively home started to feel like a beautifully decorated cage, full of things but lacking the warmth and connection that should have been there. Loneliness crept in slowly, wrapping itself around me as I tried to find ways to fill the empty spaces. Every day, I wished for something to break the monotony, to make me feel like I wasn't completely forgotten in the life we were supposed to be building together. Then, enter Mark, my father-in-law, who moved in to help around the house. He was a welcome presence, a breath of fresh air in the stillness. Mark had a knack for making everything feel more manageable, more bearable, and his kindness became a source of comfort. He wasn't just there to fix things around the house or help with chores, he made the silence feel less oppressive. We started sharing conversations over morning coffee, laughing over stories about his younger days, and he made me feel seen in a way that I hadn't felt in a long time. It felt harmless, even natural. After all, he was family, and it felt like a relief to have someone around who cared. But as time passed, the comfort I found in his presence began to feel different, like a subtle pull that I couldn't quite define. I brushed it off, told myself it was nothing, just a product of feeling neglected. Yet, deep down, I sensed that something was shifting, something I couldn't put into words but also couldn't ignore. Sometimes, the things we think are innocent can carry a power we never anticipate. And what happened next would make me question everything. Mark was attentive, understanding, and charming in a way that caught me off guard. He noticed details my husband had long forgotten, like the way I liked my tea or how I twisted my hair when I was stressed. When I was feeling overwhelmed, Mark would step in, quietly taking over chores or offering to cook dinner, his warm smile making the house feel less empty. If I seemed down, he'd share stories from his younger days, tales that never failed to make me laugh. We'd end up talking for hours, lost in a connection that felt simple, genuine. But there was something more to it, even if I couldn't admit it then. As weeks passed, those interactions grew more frequent. The way he looked at me, the way we lingered in each other's company, it started to feel different. He was always there, always present, and I found myself drawn to him. The kindness he offered wasn't just comforting, it made me feel seen, acknowledged in a way I hadn't been in ages. I told myself it was nothing, just a natural bond formed out of shared space and the loneliness that hung over us. It was dangerous, but I clung to the illusion of innocence. After all, he was family. What harm could there be in a little companionship? But deep down, I knew I was lying to myself. Each laugh, each shared glance, carried a charge that was impossible to ignore. I couldn't explain it, but I felt it, a pull I didn't want to acknowledge. Still, I kept pretending, pushing away the nagging feeling that something was brewing beneath the surface, something neither of us was ready to confront. And then came the evening that changed everything. It had been a long, quiet day, one of those where the silence felt heavier than usual. A picture frame fell from the wall in our bedroom, crashing to the floor and scattering shards of glass across the carpet. Mark heard the noise and rushed in to help. We both knelt down, picking up pieces, our hands moving cautiously to avoid the sharp edges. It was ordinary, something anyone would do, but as our hands reached for the same shard, they brushed, skin against skin. Time seemed to stop. I don't know how to describe it, but for that brief moment, the air between us felt charged, and the world outside of that room ceased to exist. Our eyes met, and in that shared gaze, there was something unspoken, something that had been building all this time but had finally made itself known. My heart raced, and I could tell his was too. Neither of us moved, and neither of us dared to speak, as if acknowledging the shift would make it real. It was a moment that lasted only a second, but it felt like an eternity, and we both knew something had changed, something we couldn't take back. In the days that followed, I tried to tell myself that the brief, electrifying moment we shared meant nothing. I told myself it was just an accident, a fleeting touch that didn't carry any real significance. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. Every time Mark looked at me, every time our hands brushed, the weight of it all settled deeper into my chest. The moments that had once felt innocent, laughs over dinner, glances shared across the room, had changed. They were no longer simple exchanges. They were loaded, thick with something I couldn't quite name but couldn't ignore either. It wasn't just in the way he looked at me anymore, but in the way I looked at him. I found myself waiting for his presence, seeking out the moments where we could talk, where I could feel the pull between us. There was a force building, one that felt almost magnetic, and every time we were together, it grew harder to resist. I could feel the space between us closing, the line that had once been clear beginning to blur. I tried to talk myself down, convincing myself that I was overreacting, that it was just the loneliness and isolation speaking. My husband was hardly home, and Mark, well, he was here, offering attention and comfort in the form of easy conversation and a quiet presence that filled the silence. But every time we spoke, every moment we shared, it felt like something deeper was happening, something I couldn't control. There were times when I caught myself lingering in his presence, finding reasons to ask him for help, just so I could feel the warmth of his proximity. When our eyes met, I could see it in his expression, something he wasn't saying, but something we both felt. It wasn't overt, nothing obvious, but there was a tension in the air, a delicate thread between us that seemed ready to snap. And the more I tried to push it away, the more it pulled me in. Then, one night, everything changed. It was a quiet evening, the kind where the weight of the world outside the four walls of the house seemed far away. My husband had been working late again, and I found myself in our bedroom, tidying up after a long day. I had been alone for hours, and Mark had come in to help with a few things, just like he often did. It felt like any other night, and yet, it didn't. This time, a lamp had fallen off the side table, sending its shade rolling across the room. Mark had rushed in to help, just as he always did, but there was something different in the way he moved toward me this time, an urgency, a quiet tension. We were both kneeling down, gathering the scattered items, and when our hands brushed as we reached for the same piece, I felt it. That unmistakable spark. The kind of electricity that races through your veins and leaves you breathless. I looked up at him, trying to steady my heartbeat, but his gaze held mine, lingering longer than it should have. I could feel the air between us thickening, heavy with something unspoken. We didn't pull away. We both stayed frozen in that moment, as if the room had suddenly shrunk to just the two of us. The tension was palpable, undeniable. I don't know how it happened, but I couldn't stop myself. Before I could even think, before I could second guess what I was doing, I was closer to him. And in that space, in the stillness of the room, our lips met. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't slow. It was immediate, a desperate need that neither of us had the strength to fight any longer. The kiss was hungry, urgent, as if the moments we'd spent avoiding this had caught up to us in one overwhelming surge. I felt his hands on me, pulling me closer, and for a moment, nothing else in the world mattered. It was like we were both finally giving in to something that had been simmering beneath the surface for too long. But just as quickly, we broke apart, gasping for air, eyes wide with shock. The silence was deafening. I could feel the weight of what had just happened crushing me, and yet, a part of me didn't want to undo it. I should have been ashamed. I should have regretted it instantly, but the truth was, I didn't know. Did I regret it? Or was it something I had been yearning for all along, something I was too afraid to admit? Neither of us spoke, standing there in the dim light of the room, hearts racing. We both knew this moment had changed everything, but neither of us was ready to face the truth of it. The guilt consumed me instantly, the moment I pulled away from Mark. It was a weight so heavy, it felt like it could crush me from the inside out. I didn't know where to look, what to say, or how to deal with the flood of emotions that swirled in my chest. But alongside the guilt, there were memories I couldn't push away. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the way his lips had felt against mine, the heat of his touch, the depth of the connection between us, one that I had never expected to experience, let alone with my father-in-law. Those images haunted me, replaying over and over in my mind like a cruel loop. I wanted to forget, to move on, but I couldn't. It felt like a part of me had been torn open, and I didn't know how to put it back together. And all the while, my husband remained blissfully unaware. He came home that evening as though nothing had changed. He kissed me, asked me about my day, talked about work. Everything felt normal on the outside. But inside, I was suffocating. How could I sit there and pretend everything was okay when I was carrying a secret so heavy, so wrong, that it was slowly eating me alive? It was as if I was living a double life, trapped between my love for my husband and the dangerous attraction I had allowed myself to feel for Mark. It was then that I realized the magnitude of what had happened. Mark and I couldn't go back to the way things were. We tried to avoid each other, both of us knowing that pretending nothing had changed would be impossible. Every conversation felt strained, every glance too loaded. I'd find excuses to keep my distance, making myself busy with small tasks, and Mark, ever the gentleman, did the same. But no matter how hard we tried, there was no avoiding the undeniable tension that had settled between us. It hung in the air like a storm cloud, threatening to break at any moment. And then, it didn't just feel like we were avoiding each other, it felt like we were avoiding the truth. Every time Mark and I were in the same room, I could feel his eyes on me. Not in the casual way it used to be, but with an intensity that made me want to shrink back. When our paths crossed in the hallway or the kitchen, we would exchange the briefest of glances, quickly looking away as though trying to erase the shared secret. But it didn't work. The unspoken words lingered between us, heavier than anything we could have said out loud. The guilt, the shame, the temptation, it was all there, hiding beneath the surface, and I didn't know how to escape it. It didn't take long for my husband to notice that something was off. At first, it was subtle, a lingering silence at the dinner table, a strange tension when Mark and I would speak. But then, it grew. He started asking questions, trying to understand what was happening. "Are you two okay?" he'd ask, his voice laced with concern.